Hello, and welcome to another episode of Music with Mr. T. Today, we're going to look at 9 black composers who changed the course of classical music history. For more information, you are always welcome to view this link here that is posted on the screen. I will also have the link posted in our description. All right, so let's get started with our lesson. The first composer we're going to look at today is Joseph Boulogne, also known as the Chevalier de Saint George. He was born in 1745 and died in 1799. He was dubbed as Le Mozart Noir, also known as Black Mozart. The Chevalier de Saint George is remembered as the first classical composer of African origins. He was born to a wealthy plantation owner and his African slave. Saint George was a prolific composer who wrote string quartets, symphonies, and concertos in the late 18th century. He also led one of the best orchestras in Europe, Les Concerts des Amateurs, and former U.S. President John Adams judged him as the most accomplished man in Europe. Here is a short excerpt of his music. Florence Price. Florence Price was born in 1887 and died in 1953. She was the first African American woman to have her music performed by a major symphony orchestra in 1933. A music critic from the Chicago Daily News heard the work performed by the Chicago Symphony Orchestra and declared it a faultless work, a work that speaks its own message with restraint and yet a passion. It is worthy of a place in the regular symphonic repertoire. Florence Price was born in Arkansas in 1877, and she was a deeply religious person. She brought the music of the African American church into her music, as well as using influences by other composers such as Dvorak, Tchaikovsky, and other European Romantic composers. Now we will hear a short clip of some music by Florence Price. Scott Joplin was born in 1868 and died in 1967. He is known as the King of Ragtime. Scott Joplin is known as the King of Ragtime. Let's take a look at some music from Scott Joplin, and then we'll talk a little bit more about Scott Joplin as a composer. When talking about Scott Joplin, we want to really understand what is the style of ragtime music. Ragtime is propulsively syncopated musical style, which is a forerunner coming before the style of jazz, and it is a predominant style of American popular music from about 1899 to 1917. Ragtime evolved in the playing of honky-tonk pianists along the Mississippi and Missouri rivers in the decades of the late 19th century. It is influenced by minstrel shows, black banjo styles, and syncopated or offbeat dance rhythms of the cakewalk and also elements of European music. Ragtime found its characteristic expression in the formally structured piano compositions. The regularly accented left-hand beat in 4/4 or 2/4 time, remember that 2/4 time is that march beat, and that 4/4 time is that common time beat, was opposed in the right hand by a fast, bouncing, syncopated melody that gave the music its powerful forward impetus. So Scott Joplin, again, was dubbed the king of ragtime, and he was the most important influential composer at the turn of the 20th century. His ideas around harmony, as well as complex bass patterns and sporadic syncopation, are still imitated by composers today. So when we talk again about that ragtime style of music, the idea of ragtime is that the piano player is taking what the band is all playing, all four families, the woodwind, the percussion, the strings, and the brass. Well, not the strings in this case, because there weren't strings in the marching band, but the woodwinds, the brass, and the percussion. The pianist is now taking all of those ideas and condensing them down to just their two hands. So when the brass is playing high, the trumpet's playing high, as well as the woodwind's playing those high parts. That's what the right hand is doing, bouncing all over the place. Now the percussion that keeps that steady beat, that pulse that stays the same, music has a steady beat, pump, 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 as well as the brass, the low brass, the trombones and the tubas, those things are being kept in the left hand. The left hand is keeping that ba 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 ba. So ragtime music is a combination of both of those things. Those high parts from the right hand in the high woodwinds and the high brass, and the left hand is taking those parts of the percussion, keeping that steady beat, and the brass as well, helping us keep that steady beat. I'll include a pop-up somewhere on the screen here to link you to another video to help you understand about ragtime music and the piano, but that is the idea of what music sounded like for ragtime and how Scott Joplin became the king of ragtime music. George Bridgetower, born in 1778 and died in 1866. George Bridgetower was an Afro-European virtuoso violinist and composer whose name you might recognize from Immortal Beloved. He is described in the film as the famous virtuoso of Africa, but his father was probably from the West Indies. In the scene, he plays Beethoven's Kreutzer Violin Sonata No. 9, a piece that Beethoven formally dedicated to Bridgetower. The scene recounts their real-life falling out, which culminated in Beethoven's withdrawing his dedication over an off-color remark that Bridgetower made. Outraged, Beethoven opted to name his sonata after Rudolf Kreutzer, the great French violinist. Let's take a look now at a piece of music from George Bridgetower, the virtuoso violinist. William Grant Still, born in 1895 and died in 1978. He was dubbed as the Dean of African American Composers, and he was the first African American to conduct a major symphony orchestra. He composed over 150 works. Still's career is a story of first. Again, he was dubbed as the Dean of African American Composers and was the first African American to conduct a major symphony orchestra, the first to have an opera produced by a major opera company, which was the New York City Opera, the first to have a symphony, his first symphony, performed by a leading orchestra, and the first to have an opera performed on national TV. William Grant Still performed, or composed rather, more than 150 works in his lifetime, including 5 symphonies and 8 operas, the most famous of which is his Afro-American Symphony No. 1. He has also found time to moonlight as an oboist and conductor and jazz arranger. So when he says he moonlights, it means like his normal job was composing, but then when he had extra time, he also played the oboe, was a conductor, and was a jazz arranger. Here's a small clip from the Afro-American Symphony. Before we begin, we're going to take a quick look over the staff, combining all the different things, or rather the score, combining all the things we've worked through so far with learning about the staff, the grand staff, treble, and bass clef. We see here the English horn is playing in the treble clef, that treble clef sign there. The timpani has that bass clef sign there. The harp, like the piano, uses both the right and the left hand, so we are focusing on treble and bass clef here. The violins are all in the treble clef in this instance. The violas are in the alto clef. We haven't talked about alto clef yet. That's coming soon. And then the cello is in the bass clef, as well as the string bass is also in the bass clef. I know it says celli here. That is the plural of cellos. So instead of saying cellos, I should have said celli. But nonetheless, let's begin our clip of William Grant Still's Afro-American Symphony. Samuel Coleridge Taylor, born in 1875 and died in 1912, dubbed as the African American Mahler. Mahler is this guy over there. And one of his things was he fought against racial prejudice during his lifetime. He's referred to by white New York musicians as the African Mahler. Samuel Coleridge, not to be confused with Samuel Taylor Coleridge, the Romantic poet, fought against racial justice. He skillfully married an African-American folk music composer with concert music. He composed pieces like the African Suite, African Romances, and 24 Negro Melodies. He is particularly known for his 3 cantatas based on the epic poem Song of Hiawatha. I may have pronounced that wrong. I apologize, but that is what it is, and you'll see it coming up soon in our screen. Coleridge Taylor was given a well-deserved foot in the door by Edward Elgar, who recommended him to the 3 Choirs Festival in Hereford, Gloucestershire, and Worcestershire, where his ballad in A minor was eventually premiered. Elgar woke up to Taylor's talent thanks to August Jaeger, a highly influential music critic and editor of publisher Novello, who advised the composer that Taylor was a genius. So now we're going to take a quick listen to a piece of music by Samuel Coleridge Taylor. This is the Hiawatha Overture. George Walker, 1922 to 2018. Walker was the first African American to win the Pulitzer Prize for Music. He received it for his work Lilacs in 1996. But not only that, Walker was also the first black graduate of the Curtis Institute in Philadelphia in 1945, the first black musician to play New York's Town Hall in the same year, the first black recipient of a doctorate from the Eastman School in 1955, and the first black faculty member to receive tenure at Smith College in 1961. One of his most famous and performed works remains as Lyric for Strings in 1946 composed, which is a beautifully moving work for string orchestra. He also brought Le Chevalier de St. George legacy to attention in 2010, honoring him in his Folies for Orchestra, an homage to St. George. Francis Johnson, 1792 to 1844, was widely celebrated in Philadelphia. He was the first African American composer to have his music printed as sheet music. What that means is before, like all of our composers had their music sang and composed and performed, but Francis Johnson was the first to be able to have his music composed together in a book printed as sheet music that looks like this. He played the violin and also the keyed bugle. He also wrote over 200 pieces, including Ethiopian songs, operatic airs, and marches. Our last composer focus is Wynton Marsalis. He was born in 1961, known as a big star in jazz music. His music is influenced by gospel and jazz, and he also won a Pulitzer in 1997 for a piece called Blood on the Fields. Trumpeter Wynton Marsalis is one of the biggest stars in jazz, and his inventive, infectious jazz, gospel, and spiritual infused compositions have become some of the most important new works to hit classical concert halls. In 1997, Marsalis became the first jazz musician to win a Pulitzer Prize for Music with his oratorio Blood on the Fields, as I mentioned here, and his violin concerto, a work composed for violinist Nicola Benedetti that's been making waves since 2019. Let's take a listen to Wynton Marsalis playing the trumpet. Before we begin, we see the trumpet here. It is made out of that gold-colored material, that gold-colored metal, and it is a part of the, that's right, part of the brass family, Here's Wynton Marsalis on the trumpet. Alright, this gentleman here, what's he playing? That's right, we said drum set, that is correct, and the drum set is a part of the percussion family. Let's listen. Okay, he's playing here now a string bass, and here is the gentleman playing the piano. Here's our drum set player again, our string set player there. There's Wynton playing the trumpet. piano again.